You talking to me?
No, I'm unmuting it so I can talk to you.
Ed?
Ed, are you awake?
I'm definitely awake.
Okay. Oh, that Ed.
How's the new computer?
Well, it's like every other new thing. It sucks for a while.
Yeah, that's it.
It's not cooperating at all. And the big problem is that when the restore my old computer to the new one, lost about 80% of everything I had on it.
That's wrong.
I agree. Anyway, so Becky, you're leading tonight, right?
I have the questions.
Okay, so leading the charge tonight is Becky Tipton. Is Jolie on?
No, they must be
Yeah.
stuck out in the field.
Okay.
I see
She
her.
was on. I saw her picture a minute ago.
Unmute,
I
unmute.
see Jolie and Cecil.
She's
Okay.
there.
So then we have Cheryl, our editor,
Get your
Steve
stuff
Missberger, and
to do today.
program chair. Robert Burns has got two functions. One is a financial and the other is the website. What else do we have on? Let me see.
Joe Pat?
Oh yeah, Joe. Joe's normally has fun day, but not this year.
What?
If you want to ask a question, you could ask him.
Got Chad.
Okay.
I don't know if he's on, is he?
No.
I don't see him. Who am I missing?
He's busy.
He doesn't know how to use an electronic calendar.
Matt Mertz is on, I think.
Matt? Is your role IT this year?
See, yeah.
I don't know where he's going.
I don't see Matt on here either.
Okay.
Well, those are our esteemed panel for tonight, and Ed, of course, our president, and we'll be fielding questions. I see that Jim Kelly has joined us as well. He's not one of our Northeast officers, but yay, Jim. So if you have a commercial question, we can direct it to him.
And he has a forklift.
And he has a forklift. If you aren't one of the officers, if you mute your phone or your computer, it'll help with background noise. But don't be afraid to add a question either by speaking up or put it in the chat box. I'm going to monitor that so that hopefully we'll get everybody's questions answered. And I wanted to kick tonight off with Jolie. Jolie had a question today, and I wanted to talk just a little bit about strategies for moving bees. Right now, a lot of our hives are really built up, and they're at a place where some of us are moving them to outyards and doing some different things. And there was a really interesting Facebook post from the South Central area that we both kind of commented on that we thought was some misinformation. So Jolie, you want to take it away?
Okay, well, I read the question differently than you did because I read the question as she had heard she needed to keep her nuke closed up for 7 days before she put it into a hive, at which point I totally freaked out.
Yeah.
Because even when we move our bees, we never close them up anymore. We've had a hive or two absolutely suffocate on us. And there is nothing more disgusting than a whole bunch of ooey gooey bees at the bottom, because when they pack up on the screen, if you have it across the entrance, they'll pack up on that screen and they'll actually, I don't know, do they vomit the honey? They regurgitate the honey. And I mean, it's awful. It's like when your hive dies over the winter, of starvation. I mean, it's just kind of the same feeling of this, I could have done something about this. And so what we typically do is, luckily we have a low trailer. And so Cecil will put a ratchet strap around each hive, and we'll use a dolly to get it over to the trailer. And then either both of us will lift it, or if I'm piddling around doing something, Cecil will actually lift it by himself. We've also used earlier, I heard some of you talking about the Hive Lifter, and we've actually used that before. And for the two of us, that's really nice. We do not have a forklift, but we do. We like to load them on the trailer at night in the dark, but we like to unload them in the morning. So like this morning, we got up at 5, drove our bees to the yard and unloaded them, and then we'll lift them off the trailer, put them on the dolly them over to our hive stand that we went out earlier in the week and set up. So for us, that works really well.
Jolie,
Uh-huh.
did she say where she got her information to leave them?
Who knows?
That's
She
probably a good question to ask. Where are you getting your information?
She
Yeah.
said, yeah, she said that they had been 7 days in transit. So this nuke had been shipped, and it had been 7 days shut up shipping, which my first thing was, then don't do that. But then, oh, well, then do I need to leave them another 24 hours? That was still confusing. If you buy a nuke, you should leave it 24 hours before you install it into your hive. And I was like, no, let those girls fly. That's,
I mean,
I'm
and this
surprised
brings
I'm
up
surprised they
another.
were live after 7 days.
I don't know that they are. I think that there is, because especially with the heat, this was from the Wichita area. I don't think that's good at all. I don't think that's it. But so
But that brings up something else. Is a lot of people talk about moving their hives from one location to another, and then they put on Facebook, I heard you're supposed to leave it closed up for 24 hours and then release them, 48 hours and then release them. It's like, no, just leave them open them up. If you feel like you need to close them up, but open them immediately. The bees will orient. So I just feel real strongly about that. But
there were a lot of people
Tells me where they're
earlier.
getting this information from.
I don't know.
yeah.
Not me.
There were other people talking about moving them, 2 feet, 2 miles, that moving them. Boy, have we seen the people write about, well, I'm going to put some sticks in front of the hive so they'll reorient. Does anybody have any idea where that idea comes from?
I've heard.
Anyone who can type can put something on Facebook.
Branches in front and it makes them, but.
No, it doesn't. They orient on the sun. So branches in front, they'll fly around them. I mean, no, it's not going to do that. And so again, another thing that has gained huge popularity on Facebook sites that I don't think has any validity. I don't know why it's there. And so I think that should be Steve Musburger's book that he writes, titled, "Where Did You Get This Information?"
I honestly would like to know where they're getting their information, because it's horrible.
Yeah.
And as program chair, I'm trying to get everything where we're doing what we're supposed to do in a timely fashion. But then it frustrates you when your own members are not, they're not getting it.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I don't know.
Whatever it takes is to get them. But as we've said 100 times, our phone numbers, our email addresses are there. Contact us. We'll give you the best information that we know how, and then probably Becky and Jolie and probably Robert, Cheryl, they're the best people to ask, what websites do I need to go to get this information? They know all that stuff. They're very good at it, and that's what we tell everybody. Go to those good websites. Stay off YouTube, please. There was one Facebook. They were clipping the wings on queens, and I said, "What in the world are you doing that for?" And then they had some name for it. Does anybody know what that is? Some name to try to keep them from swarming by clipping the wings.
Oh yeah.
I thought you could.
So, Jolie, I think Robert suggested that you write an article for the Buzzer. Is that something we should look for? It's due tonight, by the way. Cheryl mentioned that.
It will not be in this buzzer.
Okay, well, we'll look for it in the future. That would honestly, we probably have one that's a pretty good article in our archives.
I would imagine we have several.
Probably so. Okay, next question. Joe, I'm going to go to you. You want to tell your queen story? Because it was interesting.
Well, yes, last Friday, I checked on a hive, and this, I looked back on my notes, and this was what I would call a walk-away split. It's where you've got all these swarm cells in a colony. So you pull them out with the nurse bees and the brood comb, and you put it in another colony to keep and introduce a new queen to the old colony so that they don't swarm. That was the goal. And maybe I would get lucky and have a second colony, a split from this. And so this colony has just puttered around and amounted to nothing. I think they've requeened themselves now. This is the second time. And so Friday, I went and looked in there, and there's the queen running around, and she had a little bit of something on her rear end. And my first thought was, oh, she just came back from a mating flight. And that is drone parts stuck to her. And then I looked, and I grabbing for the camera, my phone, and of course it fell off and it disappeared, never to be seen again. The bit of debris, that's the way it goes. So I got a good picture of her, and I don't know if you all can, let's see, let me pull up this picture.
You can screen share. That would, she's
Trying
beautiful.
to get the picture to open. Here we go.
Down along the bottom by where it says chat and all of that, then there's a little button that says share your screen.
Yeah.
You know that.
I do know that. Let's see, share screen. Let's see, okay. This may not be worth the effort. So maybe, there she is. Okay, so there she is in the middle there, and she looks like a mated queen, but she had a bit of something stuck to her rear end. And I thought, well, okay, if that's not drone parts stuck to her, is that like a string of eggs stuck to her? And she just doesn't have the hang of getting it located right in the colony, not in the cell, not sure. But then I found 3-day-old eggs, and then I found first instar larva. I thought, well, no. So I was puzzled. I went back today and went through there, and I found a supersedure cell that was capped, and I still saw her running around in there, not doing much of anything. So I would like to ask everybody's opinion, but I think I've drawn my own conclusions. Anyway, this is a picture of, I found this off the internet. Can everybody see this picture?
Yeah.
With the queen and an arrow pointed to her rear end?
Oh,
Yes.
no, I don't see that.
You don't see that? Okay, I got to share that. Because this is what it's supposed to look like. Gosh. See, yeah, this may not be worth the effort. But this is what it's supposed to look like after a queen has been mated, and what the drone part looks like. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not more fluent at this. Oh, here we go.
So what do you think happened with this queen, that you have eggs in the hive, you see this queen, she's looking like she's just mated? What do you think's going on?
Well, because when I went back in today, what did I find? Just drone cells and the supersedure cell, which will probably not amount to anything either. I think she's a big dud. That's what I think. I think she's a poorly mated. She may have not even been a 1 or 2 day old egg when they first started to rear her. That's just my.
But she did lay a fertile egg for supersedure.
Yeah, she did. Can you see this queen
Yes.
now that's numbered with the arrow?
Huh?
With the drone
Mhm,
sign.
yeah.
She's got
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. And this is not what I saw at all. I went out today and I thought, well, what does that look like? And this is what it looks like after a queen is returned from her mating flight, if the parts are still stuck there. That's not what I saw at all. What I saw looked like kind of a string, and it was the color of eggs. And
So, Joe, did you
Maybe she had
squish the
sticky
queen?
bugs and couldn't keep the egg down there.
no, I didn't squish the queen. I don't think she's going anywhere, silly girl.
Because sometimes it's parts, her innards.
it's queen parts.
Queen parts, because she squished her.
So she may not have been well mated, and you could be that new queen laying an egg in the wrong place. There's so many options that could be. We have a continuing theme tonight. Lots of people wanting to talk about hives that have swarmed, not gotten remated. What do I do? What are my options? And so I think this is the first chapter of this saga, that because we've had so much swarming, we're going to have so much queen failure, lots and lots and lots of not requeening. So
Yeah.
so
So anyway, that's what I think is that she's probably just a big fat dud. It looks like she's mated well. I mean, she was good size, but yeah.
okay.
She's a fizzle. Oh, and their mood was really nasty when I went in there today.
Go bless their
Very-
hearts.
Very nasty.
So Jay Francis has asked a really kind of a tag-along question. He says, I made a split several weeks ago, and when the queen emerged, she wasn't much bigger than a worker bee. I initially thought it was genetics. When I saw her again the following week, she was full-sized. Was it because she was now mated, or because the workers had been feeding her, or a combination of both of those? So that does kind of dovetail nicely with what you just said, Joe, is that she looked like a great queen, but she wasn't. Anybody want to speak to that?
Robert, you're the queen guy.
I haven't had those kind of problems, so I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
His queens are perfect.
I can tell you, I've picked up several swarms that have virgin queens in them. They were not mated.
Are they
Took
easy
them
to find?
Huh?
Are they easy to find, those little virgin queens?
Well, I usually don't have too much trouble finding them because they're usually flying, running around like a knucklehead.
Yeah.
But what I was getting from some of the posts was that should I put another queen in there because I can't find the queen and nothing's happening in 7, 8, 10 days. And my theory is if the swarm went out with a virgin, you have to do your math before anything's going to happen. I took a swarm out of one of my traps, and I put this on Facebook. It was marked on 5/7, and on 5/24, she finally started to lay an egg. So it just sometimes, and if you can't find the virgin queen, then you probably should just wait it out.
Yeah.
That'd be my assumption, give it a week or two and then go back in. And even after, even the swarms, the queens are a lot smaller than they're, once you get to the hang of finding queens, it's not, you, you find them pretty quick. So
That swarm queen has been on a diet so she can fly, but a newly emerged queen, I don't know that it's so much a food issue as it is. I mean, they are feeding her a lot, but it is those ovaries develop, they start producing eggs, and that queen will plump up like Joe Pat's queen and look like a dandy.
Like a
So
pregnant woman, that's right.
what'd you say, Jolie?
Like a pregnant woman.
That's exactly, I mean, yes, that's it.
do they have the same attitude?
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
Maybe. So, moving right along, I had a Western Kansas beekeeper. I'm going to share a picture too. This is the picture I'm going to share. And let's see. And they sent this picture. They put this picture up, and I don't know why they put it on our site, but they did. And the whole caption was, "Is this hive okay?" Why are you laughing? Really?
Because I get so pissed at people who won't open their hive and tell us what they're looking at.
I can see
Bingo.
some little ones way over here on the other side too. Looks great.
So that's exactly what I said. How will you know if you don't open this hive? And so, although she was concerned about this little cup of bees out here on the landing board, and she wanted to know whether it was they were trying to get into the feeder to get more feed.
Maybe.
I don't know, but I just wanted to go. I have no idea whether this hive is okay or not, and I don't think
The
anybody
jar
here on
was
the
empty.
panel
Maybe
is.
they're wanting more. I don't know.
Yeah, could be. So Western Kansas beekeepers, whatever, open your hive and tell us what's going on in there and see what's going on. Let's see if I can stop sharing my screen and go on with another question. And it's, let's see. Oh, this is another swarm question. I told you there's a lot of these tonight. How do I stop second and third swarms from the same hive? And I would really like Cheryl to speak with this one tonight.
Yeah, she's had a lot of
I'm the
experience.
queen of after swarms this year.
Oh, and why is it so bad?
I think some of it's the weather. I think the cooler temperatures, the inconsistency in the nectar flow. We didn't have black locusts for a lot of my apiaries. And so they've just kind of been in a holding pattern. But, you know, workers will protect swarm cells. And if your queens are really good about laying a whole bunch of swarm cells in a hive, they don't necessarily, the first one out doesn't necessarily always get to all of her sisters and kill them. And sometimes they all hatch out simultaneously. So you have this war inside the hive. And sometimes the queen will just, I think, fly out to get away from some of her adversaries. And when she flies, that she takes some of them with her. I've had after swarms a lot this year. I always remember Jolie saying, well, if your hive swarm, just close it up and come back in 21 days. Last year, if I actually witnessed a swarm, I would get in the hive immediately and I would cull I would keep like the best 3 swarm cells and I would put them in the bottom center of the box, really close to each other so they could find each other even if they were blind. To keep the workers from protecting them as well. And I didn't have near the after swarms as I've had this year. But this has been a really bad swarm year. But a lot of us, we don't witness the swarms. So how, you know, you can't really do anything about that. And I hate to go through and manipulate a hive and then actually destroy queen cells and then end up having a colony that's queenless. So I'm having, you know, just craziness going on within some of my hives this year. the ones that I actually cut down to 4 frames of brood in mid-April to the ones that I didn't do really anything with other than reverse them in the spring, it's been bad on both. Maybe the ones that I didn't do anything with swarmed maybe a week ahead of the ones that I actually cut down and made splits out of and raised queens with. But it's been one for the history books, but I haven't been doing beekeeping as long as you guys have. So I like to cut them down so you're not having 12 cells hatching out, because if the colony's strong and you got a good nectar flow, that's just more for them to play with. But that's my own opinion.
Does anybody else have a strategy for reducing those second and third swarms? I think that's probably the best one that I've ever heard. I think that's about the only one I've ever heard.
And if you got I mean, I have some hives on slatted racks, not all of them. It's just another expense the more hives you get, and you got to buy more slatted racks. But on the slatted racks, they can regulate the temperature a lot better earlier in the season. So if you put them in the bottom, you're less likely to, you don't destroy them. And then, you can go back in that top box, because now that the colony's swarmed, it's not like the colony realizes, hey, we've got, some really great swarm cells already started here. We don't need to make any additional. When the queen leaves and her pheromone leaves, they instinctively make more cells. And those, I think, are not as good as quality as the ones that, usually those will hatch out just in a couple of days, so it's probably not an issue. But I get back into the hive even in a couple of days and clean out some more additional cells that they make once the queen has flown the coop. So
our biggest problem has been, in some cases, determining what hive has swarmed, because if I didn't see them leaving the hive, I could probably go through a dozen hives before I figure out which one it actually, and you cannot just peek in the top and really find that out. It's not just that simple. So Matthew's, let me see if I can check that. Let's see. So,
and I've had colonies with slatted racks that make equally as good a quality swarm cells in the bottom box as the top. So it's more than just a quick look in the top box to see what's going on, because they make really nice ones in the bottom box.
Matthew Brandis is asking, he said, do virgin queens have a strong pheromone smell? I captured some secondary swarms and they don't want to go in the box. That's pretty much it, Matthew.
It was really interesting, because I would do the bucket method, knock them into a bucket, pour them in, and I have never seen it. They literally launched off the top of the box back up to the branch.
Yeah.
They didn't even wait. It was just instantly launched back up. And my suspicion was that it was a virgin queen that didn't have a strong enough of a smell to keep them coalesced.
Yeah, good guess. Good guess.
And I have a plan for next year. This is somewhat funny, but somewhat not, is I'm going to put a Christmas tree in front of every one of my hives during swarm season because they love cedar trees. And I have several hives that have cedars right in front of it. And the queen flies right out into the cedar tree. So I'm going to park one
during the rainy season, right? We're
going to reuse those Christmas trees.
Put your swarm trap in your cedar tree.
Oh, that would be. So Emily Ford from Facebook would like to know, when is the latest date that I can safely make a split? And I'm not sure what safely means. I guess she's saying that I will have a better than even chance of making it through the winter or making a viable colony. Robert, what do you think? You do a lot of summer increases, so could you kind of speak to that?
It depends on how big you want it to grow. The bees don't build a whole lot of wax once we get towards the latter half of June. So unless there's a strong flow on, it's difficult to get them to build wax. So unless you have drawn comb, if you don't have drawn comb and you want to do a split, I think doing splits should be done in April, early May. But like right now, we're getting to where it's kind of too late. We only have a couple weeks for them to grow certain you know, I tell people generally that once the solstice gets here, which is around the 21st, 22nd, that the sun's going back down to the southern hemisphere. The bees are going, wait a minute, winter's coming, and they don't want to expend the energy to grow very much after that. So you're taking a bigger risk unless you want to overwinter a 5-frame nuke or try to get it into 10 frames, which, you know, for beginners, it's not really a new beekeeper type thing to do because it's pretty risky. You have to be on top of things the whole year, especially in the colder parts of the season, and you have to have enough bees to be able to generate heat. And so it's not easy all the time, but I would say it's too kind of late right now to be starting nukes unless you know what you're doing and you're more experienced.
And have drawn foundation, which is a huge, huge thing. So I think it is as well. So on that question, let's tag on to that. On our Facebook page and on others, someone was offering a 2-frame nuke for sale for $100. They said it was a new queen, a healthy hive. This is about half the size of what I think most nukes are sold for, but it's also about half the cost. And the person was asking, is this a good purchase for this time of year?
I think it is if you have a queenless hive. Maybe you caught a swarm, you didn't get a hive in there. Now you could purchase a laying queen and 2 frames of brood, and that's a big,
Sure.
I mean, that's a big deal.
That is huge.
a really good start.
In
That's
that
a good
instance, it would be good.
Or even a nuke.
But the answer, but the question's not saying that. They're wanting to know if they can probably raise them from there in this time of year. So
Yeah.
I mean, you have a great point, but I don't think I would try to get them through the season with that unless I was, like you said, combine it with something else.
If I was a brand new beekeeper and this was way I was going to start a colony, I think it would be risky, risky, risky.
Right.
Yeah.
But
'cause then,
as a solution for a queenless colony, 2 thumbs up. That's a good
Right.
Sure.
one.
but
Absolutely.
the main thing is,
And
you
we
know,
talk about that all the time. Have nukes around so that you do have something. If something happens, you have a queen and she's laying, she's doing everything.
yeah.
I mean, we talk about that all the time. It's always good to have at least a nuke or a small, you know, small hive going. So if you lose a queen, you have something to add to one. So,
But
So
for
Steve-
brand new, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's all right. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, brand new beekeepers being offered a nuke this time of year, to me, it's, you know, they're being taken advantage of.
I think it's always a buyer beware situation. And I think that it would be pretty easy for someone to buy into that thinking, oh my gosh, that's a great way to get started in beekeeping. And I think they could be in real trouble. 2-frame nukes, as we get into small hive beetle season, can also be small hive beetle attractants.
Heaven.
Yeah, that's just it.
has
So
anybody,
go ahead, Steve.
has anybody seen a lot of hive beetles? I've seen very few.
Yeah.
No,
Not
surprise.
right now.
Last year either. Maybe they're going away.
Yeah,
Well, it's
right.
a good thing that they're gone because with all the swarms,
Well, that
Yeah.
could be.
that's setting duck for a whole bunch of problems.
So from our chat box, it says she's a first year, Josh Toole says first year beekeeper, 2 hives from nukes, put a second deep box on a couple weeks ago, and they are building the box well. Only about 3 frames not built out, seeing a lot of nectar and brood in the middle. They've been feeding as much as they will eat. Do we need to stop feeding, or what should we do? What do you think? Anybody?
We are just now, getting to where the nectar flow is coming on strong because we haven't had that many warm days or sunshiny days. But there'll be a lot more nectar, and the bees may slow down in taking that syrup. But I'd probably feed them for a little while longer.
We would move those empty frames in a space or two so that you've got 2 drawn out frames on the outside, and put a queen excluder and a super on. Let them go.
I'm afraid that if they hold off an awful lot longer, they'll be in the situation where people say, finally, my deep box is completely full, slap on the queen excluder, put on the super that's not drawn, and the bees just quit drawing wax. So while this, but of course, once you put on a super to collect honey, do not feed them anymore, no matter what. You're done feeding. So that's, that is it. So I'm trying to get my questions somewhat in order, and I should have changed this around. Here's one that's kind of an off the wall one. My pond has algae bloom. How can I treat this without harming the bees? Anybody
What algae bloom is it? Is it the moss on top, or
it looked
water's
foamy?
turning
I don't have any
green, or-
idea. I don't know. I don't do that.
We don't either.
Yeah, I don't.
They're going to go wherever they're going to go. That toxic algae they always talk about. That
Red algae or whatever.
And some of that has to do with oxygen. If you have an aerator, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
But you got to have the right amount, the right aerator for the size that you're trying to do.
I think this is a real pond, like,
Yeah.
you know, in the pasture.
There's a company called The Pond Guy, and he'll answer questions like that.
I think it's blue-green algae is what it's called. I can't remember.
Was it the one that was on Facebook?
Yep.
Mine that a couple years ago, and I put a handful of grass carp in there, and it cleaned it up pretty good.
Yeah, somebody else mentioned grass carp.
I saw that. It worked for me. I don't know if it'll work for them, but it worked for me.
Good.
And
That's
your pond, cows go in it, and all.
Yeah.
Works.
Yeah, I don't know what pond they have. We have koi ponds, and so we deal with algae, but not like a regular pond would have with the moss and stuff. But the bees like that moss because they can land on it and get their water and then fly away. So
jump in.
Without drowning anyway.
Hello, am I in?
Yep.
Okay. Our pond has the fibrous algae that grows up over the top and around the edges and stuff. Very nasty stuff. The grass carp won't eat it. They'll eat everything else that's there before they even touch that. But I have read that the copper sulfate, you can use it and not harm the bees on that. I was going to give it a try, so I'll let you know after I'm done whether I still have any hives or not.
so.
Experiment in action.
What's your favorite water source for your bees? What kind of water source are you providing for your bees?
Me?
Yeah.
A 1 acre pond.
If you got a pond, that's it. Anybody else
pond.
doing a provided water source for your bees?
Just
Anybody?
our water features around our house that we have a
You have
front one in the
beautiful
back.
koi ponds, yeah.
Yeah, and we have the plants that they can come in and land on, and they're in there all the time.
They love the lettuce and stuff.
And we do use, it's called an Algae Fix. It's so much per gallon of water, and it hasn't harmed our bees at all. We don't use a lot of it, just but that does work for our koi ponds.
Copper sulfate will take the oxygen out of the water. And if you're not careful, it'll also kill the fish, but it does get rid of all the algae.
That's what I understood. We were going to do small sections at a time and kind of work our way around.
You got to be careful.
I think the low water level and the heat we had 2 years ago pretty much took care of most of the fish. So we're in the process of rebuilding.
Do small areas at a time.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a long question now, and it says we had to start, this is from Beverly, and Beverly says we had to restart our hives because we lost it last September after 5 successful years. We only have 1 hive in our backyard. Well, 5 successful years is good. We started over and installed a 3-pound box of bees with a queen on March 28th. After several weeks, we had become concerned as there was a little bit of evidence of a laying queen, but very low numbers. After 2 full months now and a careful inspection today, we do not have a queen. So the question is, should we buy another box of bees with a mated queen, and will the existing bees accept this new box of bees, or do you recommend only buying a queen at this point in the season? And I think the crux of that is how many bees are left in your box, but there's a good use for that $100 nuke right there.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
You know what I would probably suggest is if they know somebody that has a swarm they would like to give away, maybe use that, because we've had so many swarms this year. I'm sure there's people wanting to, oh sure, come get this one or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would be one way to get out of it, I guess.
That good use of a swarm, that's for sure. So the hive that swarmed, this is another question. And then they didn't requeen themselves. It's been at least 3 weeks. I think that's a critical number. How long until they develop laying workers? And what options do I have to try to save this hive? And will they make honey? I thought that was funny, but I'm probably the only one. So who's had laying workers?
Me.
Go, Steve. Tell us
3
about
of them.
this. Yeah.
3 of them. Yeah, one, and I write the dates that I go in, and the queen's there, everything's going good. You go back 2-3 weeks later and it's a mess. And I just take them out about 150 to 100 yards and I shake them all out, and the ones that make it back, great. If they do, they don't. That's you certainly don't want all that stuff to hatch.
So, because it'll be just drones and craziness and that.
Well,
So,
and if they do hatch, it's a varroa bomb.
one of the things you said, though, you keep track of those dates. He says it's been at least 3 weeks. And I think knowing that for smaller beekeepers is really important, that if they don't know when that hive really swarmed, they won't have any idea when they should expect that queen to be in there. I think that's a real important thing. But it takes a lot longer to develop a laying worker than you think it might right off the bat.
Well, does anybody ever install a frame of brood, the open brood with eggs and young larvae? And if they're queenless, they usually will make themselves their own queen.
They'll try.
They'll try.
And I've done that, and I've put, if I don't think I have a queen in there, then I put a frame from another hive.
Plus, I think you get a little bit of queen pheromone.
That stalls everything out.
Don't you get a little bit of queen pheromone off that brood frame? They tend to not be laying workers when you install some brood frames too. Also,
It'll buy you some time.
Yeah.
But usually they become laying workers at about
beforehand. If you catch it after she's in there, and that's what we talked about in that film I did at our meeting. Is I mentioned on the last hive that I didn't know if I had a queen. I've done several inspections and couldn't find it. So then I started seeing eggs, and I was trying to see, do I have multiple eggs or in the cell? And so that was going to tell me what I had, but then we found the queen. So, that
how long
suspicion of a worker laying went away.
How long for laying workers typically?
It's generally about 4 weeks without a queen. Then they
And what's after broods hatched out, or is that during the time when they're
so that's like no brood, no eggs, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
it's about 4 weeks being queenless and without brood.
Breasted laying worker.
But we've also heard that there's usually a worker laying an egg every once in a while anyway. So even on a ride hive, I know we've had that in one of our guest speakers talked about. Is that true?
I don't remember hearing that before. What did Cecil add about laying workers?
As long as there's brood in that hive, that suppresses the laying workers until you have no
Okay.
brood. So that has to do with it.
I can't hear him.
Yeah.
Because he won't speak up.
No, he's too far away.
Tell us, Jolie.
I'll speak for him
He's-
then.
He's saying that the brood will suppress it, but unless you do more than put brood in, you're just wasting a frame of brood, pretty much, if you ask me.
So, but in a hive that's gone queenless, we think it's usually at least 2 weeks after all the brood has hatched that we will see then signs. So you've gone queenless, all the brood, all the capped brood, all hatched out. So you've really got some time to do that. But nonetheless, it's once it's happened, I'm in the shake 'em category. We don't try to save them. It's just,
It's a
yeah,
horrible
you can
mess.
do it, but it's costly, costly, costly. And
Jolie, if you give them a frame of brood with some eggs and 1 or 2 day old larvae, and if they don't make swarm queen cells,
But Cheryl, you've got 16 days. To
I know you got a whole bunch of downtime. I know.
Then she's got to lay eggs. By
Right.
then, you don't have any bees left.
Right.
it depends on when it's given. Cheryl, if that was this colony they still have brood in there, but they don't have any eggs. And at that time you give them a frame with eggs. Yeah, they might raise a queen, but later, not so much.
Yeah.
And even that, if you can get them to raise a queen, that's great. And then that's your small hive that you can combine with something else later on. Or you
Yeah,
can
I
baby
know.
through the winter.
I know it's late this time of year. It's a little late, but yeah, combine it with
Or combine it with another hive and move on.
Okay, I have another picture for us. Oops, that's the wrong one. Hang on, sorry.
That's a good one though.
Oof,
It
that
was the
a
one we did
horrible one.
before. Darn it.
No, that was
Joe's-
just this week.
It just came up.
Yeah, that was just this week.
Yeah.
That isn't the one I wanted. It was the one that was, this is the one I want to share. I don't know if I can see that. Try that again.
Someone told
I'm
me
sorry. Let me ask a different question and I'll get that to come out. So let's see.
Well, the guy put it right in front of his hive.
Somebody asks, is it too late to replace a queen, and how to encourage bees to draw new foundation? That was 2 parts of a question. I think we've said, no, you can replace a queen right now for sure, but how do you get them to draw foundation? You know, we haven't heard from Matt Mertz. Matt, what do you think?
He's not on tonight.
Oh, he
Sit
was.
down and read them the
Time.
book. They don't read the same books that we do all the time.
No, isn't that the truth? Okay. Nope, I keep getting the same picture. This is the blue hive, right?
No, it's the one with all the waste in a box.
rock
It's
someone
That's the one I wanted.
Or
Well, that's
robbing.
what I'm
You got
seeing.
it the whole time, Becky.
No, mine keeps showing up the blue hive. Okay, so
No.
that's it. That's what we want to talk about. So this person on Facebook was told that to eliminate the chance of robbing in his hive, that he should put this box of bait to attract other bees to this box of waste comb, and that was the way to deal with hive robbing. What do you think on that?
No,
No. Again,
no.
okay, Steve, add this to your list. Where did they get this idea? This is not a good one.
I think
So,
that's
you
a
know-
question we should start asking them. Who gave you this idea?
Because
I
it
mean, we
didn't come
need to
from
know where these
us.
sources are.
You know, it looks like he still has entrance introducers on.
Yeah, we didn't go on to that. We just kind of were blown away.
is the plastic, is that a queen excluder or is
Yes.
it a
Propolis trap.
propolis
Like a
trap?
propolis trap, like one of the green ones.
Yeah, I don't know.
Clear,
I
with
don't know.
white.
The propolis traps are black. This one's white. It's a plastic
I've got
queen
a green
excluder.
one.
No, wait a minute. I have some green ones.
Yeah, I have some green ones too.
I didn't buy them.
I've never used them, but I have some.
I have some. I've never used them either, Steve.
So we aren't to robbing season yet. They probably will be here as soon as the swarm season is over. But
Yep.
what kinds of things do you do to avoid robbing situations? What do you think? Steve,
No
what do you
open
do?
feeding.
No open feeding. I agree. What else? Robert, what do you do?
No sharing, no putting debris or combs out for them to rob and clean up.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this person was saying to do. So I agree. Jolie, what do you do to avoid robbing?
Everything you guys said. Really, can you think anything else? Just have a good, strong colony.
Yeah,
I like to cover boxes when I inspect and I pull that top box off. I cover them with an inner cover.
If I've got a weaker hive, I'll put an introducer on.
Yeah.
That's good.
If I know that hive, maybe it's one of my if I need something, it's there, or you catch a small swarm, I think it should have the introducer on there that it can guard that entrance.
I mean, we used to have it in our constitution, but I think it's important for people to know that bacterial diseases like foul brood, American foul brood can spread because of putting supers out and letting bees rob it and clean it. I mean, that disease isn't as prevalent as it used to be because mites kill your bees now more quickly than, faster than we can, So we don't have that as much, but that was a problem why we would say don't leave your supers out. Don't put your honey out to let them clean it up. Don't feed honey from the store, that kind of thing.
Keep your inspections brief, especially during a dearth.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, and I'll tell you what I put on Facebook on this thing is I accidentally left some stuff out and they were robbing, but it was 50 yards away. And one of the hives was getting robbed out and my chickens run around those hives and the rooster got over there. And when I found the rooster, they had stung him about 20 times in the head. And by the next day he was dead. And the hen that got it, she's just now recovering, and that's been about 6 weeks. So they're not very nice when robbing's going on. You just got to be careful what's out there.
We've had a few questions asking about, is this normal behavior? And right now we're having sheets of brood hatch out. And so there's a lot of flying around the front of the hive and concerned because is this robbing behavior? When the bees are doing this little floaty figure 8 in front of the hive, that's not robbing behavior. When they're doing robbing, it's like a fool could tell they're pissed. It's just they are on it. They are after it. Every crack in the hive is being attacked. So it's a bad situation. How about robbing screens? Anybody use those?
I do.
And why do they work?
Because bees that are going to come in to rob will come in, they just fly in straight into the entrance. And so if you can put any type of barrier up across the very front that allows the bees still to land and crawl in behind the members of the colony to get behind it. But the bees that are robbing will just come in on the wing straight into the entrance. So if you can do any type of I even just tacked up a couple of screens last year when we had it built in one hive that I saw. And you'll have bees not just at the front, they'll go around every crevice around the back side and cling around the perimeter. So it's a dead giveaway.
Do you only use that during a dearth, or do you use those year round?
It's usually in a dearth, but sometimes this year I won't be probably doing June increases, right, Robert? Because I have too many swarms. But
Me neither.
when I make smaller increases in late June, sometimes those weaker colonies are prone to get bullied by some of the bigger colonies, and so I will sometimes automatically put robbing screens on the front of those. Already have them in place, so I can just flip it down if I need to. But those are smaller nukes, smaller, weaker colonies. But I've had it in some of the bigger ones too.
I think it's a great tool to have. Honestly, before I saw those, I think the only solution sometimes for robbing was you throw the big wet sheet over the whole hive and hope everybody goes home. No, they don't.
If you can even out your colonies too, kind of prior to dearth, which we never seem to get that done. But if you can move some frames of brood and try to even out your colonies, should probably help too.
Okay, well, we've about made it through all of the questions. Did anybody address, Leo wanted to know how to encourage bees to draw a new foundation. And this particularly as we go into the honey supers is going to be, as Robert pointed out, we get further into the year, it gets harder to get them to do that kind of drawing. Anybody have a good strategy for that?
Well, Matthew Brandis just asked if he should put his wet supers out for the bees to rob, and the answer to that is no.
No.
But a good thing is to keep those, and like when we go out, our first supers that we put on every year are our wet honey supers from the year before. So we've extracted them. They still have a little sticky honey in them, and that kind of gets the bees up through the queen excluder to take care of that honey, clean those supers out and stuff.
So you don't even set them back on top of your hives to clean out on top of the inner cover?
The next spring we do. No,
okay.
We don't. We don't ever do that.
And that's probably if you only had a couple of hives, that's okay to put it back. All I've ever found is if you put it back on, they gather it up and they put it back in the cell. So, but if you had one or two, they can clean it up. But if you have a lot of hives, you can't take all those supers and put them back on, let them clean it up.
We have a hard enough time getting them out there one time, let alone two times. So
yeah, that's right. And then go back and get them again.
Get them again.
And get the bees out. It's not fun. And I think, if I remember right, Becky said once that it does help strengthen that comb up a little bit by leaving it in there. Is that?
When they're dry, they're very fragile. If you put them on,
brittle.
Yeah.
So
I don't know that it strengthens them, but when they're really dry, they're really brittle. So they break pretty easily. So that's.
And if you've got them in a shop where it's cold and you move them around, they can break it all out. So I just leave them wet, but we also, I stack them and I use, some people disagree with it, but I use wax moth crystals. Just it may not be for any of the wax moths, but I think it helps keep all the other critters out of it too. So when I stack them in my shop, so.
Going back to how to get the bees to draw out new foundation, the secret is have a great honey flow.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good answer.
It's strong colony, good honey flow. They'll build new foundation, and if you don't have a strong colony, they don't feel like they need to do that.
I know if I've got an empty super, new foundation, even adding a frame of drawn will sometimes encourage those bees up into that empty super. But if you don't have any drawn foundation, it's hard to get them to do that. And so it's a catch-22 until they start drawing. A lot of people don't use queen excluders for that reason. Oh, they wouldn't go through the queen excluder. Again, like Cecil said, if it's a strong nectar flow, that excluder is not going to even slow them down. But if it's not a strong nectar flow, it'll seem like that's the reason they won't go up
Do
in
you
there.
think it helps to bottom super then, Becky?
Helps your back or helps your, what do you,
Well, if you want to lift 4 boxes off and put an empty one, then put the 4 back on. Yeah. Does that
I
help?
think
Do you
it
think that
probably
encourages
does, but no.
Steve, can you expand on how you're storing, and Jolie, how you guys are storing your wet supers? Martha asked, and I have the same question. I mean, are you wrapping them up in plastic? Are you freezing them? Are you just...
Well, once I extract my honey from my frames and I work out of the shop, I have a freezer. And as soon as I get done extracting, I put them in the freezer just in case there's something in there for 24 hours. And then I put cardboard down on the floor of my shop and I stack them. And then I'll put some wax moth crystals on there, and usually they're good to go. In the wintertime, I don't worry about it. We don't have any, you don't have too many bugs in the wintertime to do anything, but that's all I do. And occasionally I'll find a wax moth running down along that bottom of that frame. Just every once in a while you find one that thinks it can make a home there. They like the pollen and that sort of stuff, but I just freeze them because my freezer's there, and it isn't any more work than what I'm already doing. That's what I do. I think Jolie and Cecil have something different they do, but
Yeah, we just have a building that we extract in that's not heated. And Cecil just stacks them up after he extracts them, and we put paradichlorobenzene on, and that's all we do.
Yeah, and for the most part, if you're using queen excluders, you don't have it, you've never had brood in that super, and you don't have much pollen or anything in there. It's not a wax moth issue with those, even before it gets real cold.
yeah.
But
I've even seen in one cell of pollen in there where there was a small hive beetle larva in it. Going, what are you trying to do? So I don't know. I just freeze them just for my insurance and mine. So yeah, they shouldn't be in there, but every once in a while.
Someone had put on Facebook the other day about upper entrances, and we see a lot of that. And I mean, granted, our equipment's really old, so we have some natural upper entrances, but we never put an upper entrance in the supers for the simple reason that we don't want pollen in our supers. And if you have an upper entrance, it's that bees will tend to bring pollen and put them in the supers, which attracts small hive beetle, and that's what the wax moth is after. So if you can control those, it will help to control the wax moth.
I can't hear Jolie. Can you guys?
Yeah, you need to turn your head a little bit. Or something.
That's okay. I think we got it though, and I agree that we do the exact same thing. Martha is continuing in that, and she says, "What about mold on the supers? It's warm for a few months after extraction. Do we have any trouble with mold on your supers?"
No,
I haven't.
No.
Sometimes we'll see mold in a hive, but that's not often. But it'll happen early spring sometimes, or when it's really moist. Really, it's a ventilation issue, I think, and that's it. But stored supers, I don't know that I've ever seen mold on stored supers.
If there was a high moisture content and you extracted it, would that cause it?
No.
No?
I suppose it could cause fermentation. I mean, but I've not seen that either in a super. I don't know.
You know, I want to go back to Matthew's question of should he wrap his supers in plastic?
Good question.
And the answer is no, 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 absolutely not. Because in your honey supers, you typically have some wax moth eggs, just because. And so if you wrap those in plastic, you're actually creating an incubator. And so when you open that up the next spring, you would have you would have just a webbed mess. It would be awful. So don't do that.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think I have one last question that really isn't a bee question at all. It is, I just saw a Japanese beetle. What are some effective treatments that won't harm the honeybees?
Don't use 7.
Help.
The pheromone traps work great.
They say, though, you're not supposed to use the pheromone traps because you'll actually bring more in.
But here's the thing, Robert, if I bring them in from everywhere and they go in that bag and die, what difference does it make?
Well, according to
the trees, they're going to the trap.
Yeah,
That's
from the
my
articles
theory.
I read,
And
not all of them are going into that bag. You're still bringing them in.
Most of
Depends on how big your property is. Is that true? I mean, Cheryl, you had probably the most horrendous experience with small hive beetle. Would you like to tell your story?
Oh, Japanese beetle.
Japanese
Well,
beetle.
I don't know that it was from spraying. You're talking about when I had lost a bunch of colonies that year?
Yes.
We had very few last year, and the year before, I was taking trash bags of them and throwing them every week out.
Yeah, me too.
And I used the pheromone traps. They worked great. My trees, I lost 2/3 of a maple tree with them. And once I put those traps up, 95% of those beetles were off of that tree. So
I don't think you're
I'm
going
just telling you from my
you're going
experience,
to lose your tree.
they pull them off your trees.
It makes your tree look unsightly. And they love linden trees, and they will defoliate a linden tree, but it's never killed my linden trees, ever. I don't ever spray for small.
It didn't kill my tree, but it came back this year great.
You can take a container with soapy water, and you can go out at dusk and at dawn. If you've just got a few plants, it doesn't work for Chad, who has a whole orchard. But if you have just a few plants, you can pick them off, throw them into your soapy water and just let them sit. And you can pick them off your rose bushes and stuff like that.
I need a big ladder for my maple tree.
I don't worry about them. They defoliated the top third of both of my linden trees.
I know. And you know what? 3 years ago, they were horrible.
They typically don't attack until the linden trees are already bloomed. They've already done their stuff. And then I have these lacy leaves that fall and cast on the ground underneath. My lindens.
3 years ago, they were bad. Last year, there were nothing.
Well,
I didn't have any this year. I haven't seen any this year. So
the people, they typically
whether killed the larva or what.
They'll attack plants that are in bloom, and that's when you have your next door neighbor get out and start spraying. And you'll listen to the Toby Tobin show, and they'll spray them every 2 days with spectricide triazicide, which isn't very effective, but they'll just spray every 2 days. So you've got these people out in your backyard trying to salvage their blooming plant that they love by applying a pesticide on it every 2 days that your bees are going out and foraging on. And I think we have more issues with your backyard gardener than even Jim has sometimes with his commercial, your farmers that are spraying everything, because I can't hunt all them people down in a 2.5 mile radius, where he has probably 1 or 2 farmers and their spray regimens that he can coordinate around. So we just don't know where they're picking it up. So, and they're using 7 dust because they've been told the 7 dust is, gentle on everything. It's probably one of the most lethal things you can use in your yard.
Yep.
So on our chat, this goes back to what is prescribed and what is legal to use as well. This from the Henshaws are asking on our chat. Last year, I wrapped my wet supers with a bleach blanket. Is
Beach.
that as
Oh,
bad
beach.
as? Oh, it is say beach. Thank you. Can't read either. A beach blanket, is that as bad as a plastic bag? Didn't get any moths. Maybe I was just lucky. So any ideas on a beach blanket wrap?
You don't need to. There's no reason to do it.
And as you pointed out, Jolie, every hive has wax moth eggs in it. When those eggs hatch out, the bees in a healthy hive, in a strong hive, take care of the larva. They carry them out, they kill them, they do whatever. It is in a weak hive that wax moths will get a hold and then cause massive damage, or in empty frames. And so we have to deal with it in empty frames. And so that is it. So I misread that one. I had one more question that I kind of skipped over here and I have no idea why. John and Elaine ask, your hive swarms, how soon should you go into that hive? Immediately, a week or a day? And I think we kind of talked about that. What should you look for when you go in? How long should you wait before checking a hive that is a swarm you caught? That was asked on Facebook today. I caught a swarm, put it in a hive. I left and it left and went back in a tree. I caught it again. I put it in a hive. It stayed for 2 days and left. And why does this happen? Anybody want to weigh in on that one? There's several parts to that. We could talk about first how you have a hive swarm. How soon should you go into that hive? Anybody?
Minimum.
I don't know that it matters, other than you have queen cells in there that you might tear out that by looking in there. So
Honestly, if it's Cheryl's and you can go in and you know what you did, then you cut them out. Cut down some of those queen cells. You might do those secondary swarms.
3 weeks.
But if we know one swarmed, if we're not going to go in and try to do that, I'm probably not back in there for a good 2.5 to 3 weeks.
I
Because
wouldn't even know. I mean, when you have 10 or 12 in an area, you don't know which one's swarmed anyway.
but
let's
you saw them
call it.
coming out. No.
Now, if you do the math, if swarms typically leave when they cap the queen cells, that means there's another 7 to 8 days before any queens are going to be hatching out. Then she has to mature when she hatches out. That's another 5 days. And usually she'll mate within the next additional 5 days. So that's 18 days right there. So that's 2.5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And
then you
that's
gotta
why I write dates on top of my hive, so I know that, hey, capped queen cells, so on this date, then I can do the math later on the next inspection. So,
And then we have to have good mating days.
Yeah.
do what?
You have to have good weather for mating days.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You hope so. So on the other side of that, you caught a swarm. How long do you wait before you inspect it?
I usually wait a week.
I do too, about a week.
Because I'm looking for
whenever
eggs
I can get to them.
Usually, if
I'm
it's
looking for eggs and larvae. I don't look for the queen.
Yeah, primary swarm, you're going to have probably eggs and larvae.
Some of these swarms, they just take a while. If you're not adding stuff in with those swarms, one thing I've seen that helps keep a swarm in a box when you catch them is give them a frame of honey or some drawn comb, because they're probably hungry by the time you get them. So you got some honey in there, they'll usually stay in there. I haven't had any problems with them flying out. Out of all the swarms I've ever had, I've only lost one, and it was a teacup, and I think they robbed it out. So I always have something. You can't always do that, but something in there for them. They think it's great. And I've got 20 of them this year. I haven't lost one yet.
We haven't, yeah. We'll usually feed them, give them some food, or
Yeah, I give them food right off. I put feeder on right then.
So, and why they leave is that hive started looking for their next residence, their next cavity that they wanted to inhabit before they left the hive, the parent hive. They started looking for that new home. And honestly, sometimes whatever they're going to is just so appealing, they're going to keep, they like it better than whatever you provided. That makes them ungrateful. I understand that, but nonetheless, they are going to go ahead and go to that swarm. So that is why they left, is whatever they were looking at was just more appealing than what you provided. So I guess that's it.
One thing I did this year, which I had never done before, I put a queen excluder underneath, which I just wanted to see if that did anything. But usually she's small enough she could go through it anyway.
That's the problem with the swarm, is the swarm queen is a skinny queen. So she's probably going to go through anyway. I don't know that that's very helpful.
There's kind of another issue with that is, and what I have found is, if you put a super on to give them room, and you put a queen excluder and they swarm, that virgin queen can come back after she's mated, and she'll go up in that super. And then once she starts laying, she can't go back down. So those, you kind of gotta, how did she get up there? This one must have been the one that swarmed, and this is the queen that she went to the wrong place to lay. So it is, it's just it's a game for everybody. And then Becky, there was a conversation. I need somebody, I want somebody to come out and mark my queen. I can't find my queen, and I keep looking and I don't find her, and I need no other. We've said it a million times, you don't need to find your queen. You need to learn to find eggs. Find that egg and your inspection's done. That egg sticking straight up, that queen was there 24 hours ago, and there's no reason. And we also talked about beekeepers kill a lot of queens by accident. But if you watch a queen on a frame, she's always moving. She's moving around. And so when you're putting stuff in and going through everything, you have a bigger chance of killing her than anything. So, just go to that first frame of egg or brood and find an egg and say, hey, I'm done. Look, maybe check some outside ones and whatever you got to do, or add a box. But, digging around for a queen, unless you have a specific goal with that queen, replace her or whatever, make a split, whatever. Yeah, and we all love to see our queens. That's even true. After this many years, I just kind of get a little tickled because I get to see my queen. So it's just do an inspection and know what you're looking for, and don't dig around trying to find the queen.
So I don't have any more questions, and I don't see any on the chat that I missed. If I did, I apologize. Oh, there comes one. You guys make a liar out of me. My swarm queen ended up above the queen excluder in the super, laying it full of brood, with 2 brood boxes below full of honey. Somebody asked that, and we didn't answer that question. That just made me think. When you have a honey-bound colony, what do? Anybody have one? And I sympathize with Mike that we've been there, done that, and I don't know what you do with that except say bad words. So when you have a honey-bound colony, which happens a lot when they have swarmed, you'll get lots of honey in the brood area. How do you deal with that?
Last year, I didn't do anything. I just let it go. If you have drawn supers, you can put above it. That's great because they'll move it up.
They can, yeah. That is a good strategy. That will work.
And if you don't have drawn supers, you just hope for the best. Is that right?
Well, you could possibly take some outside ones that doesn't have brood in them and extract it and put them back in because they're big, but that's a lot of work. I'm not for sure I do that.
All right. Well, I just had one hive that seemed to be not necessarily honey bound, but nectar bound.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a small distinction, but I got into the brood nest off a swarm hive, and there's not a whole lot of places to lay.
Yeah, and that's part of why if you're feeding bees packages and that stuff, you have to be careful because they like to hoard just about anything they can. So you got to be real careful how much you're feeding at that. You want a strong nectar flow too.
I've found myself, this burn, I've found myself to, if you take the hive tool and just make a couple cuts in the comb itself in that hive bound, and you don't have to do it in every frame, like on a couple of frames, just about 2 whacks on each frame and put it back together with your drawn comb supers above, and it seemed to help.
Anybody got a comment with that?
Not tried it. I don't know
Yeah.
why, it could be the thing. So it is an issue for sure. That would be one of the signs that you can get in a hive and know that it's swarmed is when you see so much, or that it isn't queen right necessarily. You'll see a lot of nectar in the brood area. That's kind of one of those, something's not right here. Something's. So Steve, I think we're about to the end of tonight's get together. What do you have planned for our regular monthly
You were going to ask that.
meeting?
And I have to get with a couple of people, but it's looking like we may do some stuff on different products that we have, and maybe some labeling and that sort of stuff. And I think I talked to Robert about maybe rendering propolis.
A little bit of propolis, yeah.
Some kind of added products that you can do.
Okay.
And what else? Probably some plants. And so
Dixie Sperlin was particularly interested in evaluating a queen acceptance. So if you've got a queen that you're installing, how do you know whether she's accepted or not? Did we have any progress on trying to release a queen and show that acceptance?
I don't have any. It would be.
Mine are all installed. I don't have that either. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Some people like to just let them go in between frames, and then I like to lay the frame down and let her out and watch them, see what they do with her as she's walking out onto the frame when I release the queen.
Yeah.
Man, if they ball up on her, you got to be fast anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
You got to be fast and get her.
You got to be ready to use your bare hands.
Quick, it's not what, Robert?
You have to be ready to use your bare hands and take those gloves off.
Yeah. And sometimes you find people, they release a queen, they said she flew, and sometimes that's an indication she knew they weren't going to accept her. Sometimes that's not, but that has been a subject. But I don't know if we have any. I don't know if we have any films on that. We probably should have done one this spring, but I don't. I'm not putting any more queens. Cheryl,
I'm not either. I don't have any.
Cheryl, you got queens.
So
Come on.
The idea is not to see what right looks like, but rather what wrong looks like.
Right.
Because when you're looking at that queen and you're kind of new and she's still in the queen cage, you don't know what they're doing, whether they're biting the cage or they're taking care of her. It's very hard to see. So it's more the idea of what wrong looks like than what right looks like.
How about Jim?
So if you take your finger, yeah, if you take your finger and brush the bees off that are on the queen cage, and those bees jump right back on and start kind of biting at the cage, and then you brush them off and they jump right back on, you got a problem. But if they're just kind of a couple bees on there not paying a whole lot of attention, then it's likely she's accepted. I mean, they're really intent on that cage if if
They
there's
want to
some,
kill her.
And
they're
it's easy.
they're trying to get her.
Yeah, and I use the push-in cages and probably should do a little thing on that. I'll see how things go. I use a big push-in cage and I put it over emerging brood, and there's honey and everything in there, so that queen's in there and emerging brood are coming out in that cage with her. They take care of her. They're spreading her pheromones around, and I have a really good acceptance rate with that. That's just what I've been doing the last few years. Kim Fulton was also said he does it, and he keeps his queen in that cage for 10 days. So I did them. Most of mine were around 8 days, and they all accepted really easy. So, but they were all splits, not packages. So maybe we'll have a little something on that. Maybe I can get Ed, the photographer, to come out and we'll do that.
Oh. Mike Kratzky just asked, was this our fun day? Huh, nice. I wish that we could have a fun day, but the Great Plains Master Beekeepers are having a virtual fun day. It will be, is it the 13th and 14th, Jolie? 14th?
Yes, January 13th and 14th. June.
We're not going to do it in January. Would not be good. So they have 2 full days of speakers, of demonstrations, of in the hive activities that they are going to do via Zoom. And there will not be honey ice cream, but there will be other fun people to talk to and listen to. And I'm not sure how much of it will be recorded, but I think a lot of it will be, so that you will get then access to it if you sign up to participate. People like Marla, Jennifer Saruda, Gary Reuter, just all kinds. Ginny, who is was the judge at our state fair, is going to talk about preparing fair entries. There will be a lot of fun things to do, and then Jolie and I'll be doing stuff too. So there'll be fun.
But the really important thing is you have to go to either their website or their Facebook, and you have to sign up. However, they don't have their registration figured out yet. So you sign up and you put your name down, and then they'll send you a registration form. And there is going to be a fee donation involved. And you can choose our club, NEKBA, or Kansas Honey Producers, but in this case, NEKBA. And part of the registration will actually come to our club, because Becky and I are on the committee. So make sure you do that. But you will not have access to the website for the Zoom talk unless you register.
Yeah, it is a pre-register event, and I don't think they'll have limited numbers. I think that they will be able to accommodate all of us. They have a very large Zoom ability, but they will have varied activities. So admittedly, spending 2 days in front of my computer doesn't sound like a really fun time, but you can pick and choose. And to hear some of those speakers that she's going to have, I'd be willing to spend some time in front of the computer. It will be a good thing to do.
Have you heard, is the state fair going to go on?
We don't know.
They don't know.
Well, the state fair people keep saying yes. They keep saying, yep, we're moving ahead. We're going to do it. Steve Christianberry wants to know who is doing the virtual fun day. Let's see if we can get that into the chat notes for everybody, or I'll put it up. It's on our Facebook page. I know it's on there too, so we can get that. It is the Great Plains Master Beekeeper Group through University of Nebraska that's doing that. The state fair, Steve, I think that they think they're going to have it, and I don't know, because has Johnson County canceled the county fair?
Johnson County is still saying they are having the fair, And
Okay.
on the extension website, it said something about it would be different, but the only thing I have heard is they're still plan on having open class because there's asking for volunteers in open class. They're still planning on having the commercial exhibits. And the only thing that was iffy was the carnival. So I don't know.
They did just send out a survey for the 4-H members to find out to what extent we're comfortable in participating to help them gauge what's going to happen. But they are planning on doing it in some form.
Well, it depends on what the governor says we're going to do, doesn't it?
No, it does not. It depends on each county can make their own
He
decision.
doesn't have the power to.
I don't think
No.
so.
So what she's done is she's pushed it down to the counties and said it's up to each individual county now.
According to the website, Douglas County has canceled theirs due to the COVID virus.
They got a lot of smart people.
That was August 17th. So it's canceled.
Well, theirs is usually the week before ours. Theirs is usually in July. Well, I wrote a strong letter saying
I'm in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's a different state.
Wrong state.
But Johnson County, I wrote a letter saying I was really sorry they'd chosen to have the fair. And I just think people won't come. So
You need to stay out of Minnesota for a while.
Yeah.
And that, I think that the state fair, the concern about the state fair is exactly the same, that we could all spend a lot of time and energy trying to get ready for the state fair and there will be no one attend. And I don't know. We're going to talk about it.
That's a very crowded place.
Yeah. We're going to talk about it for KHPA this week. So we'll see what we decide to do as a group for KHPA. But I think the state fair people think they're going forward.
FYI, Sedgwood County canceled their county fair.
You would think that they would, well, they better make a solid decision soon.
I mean, I can't imagine they'd have any concerts or anything would come. So I don't know.
But even in those vendor areas, they're just packed in there.
According to what Christy Sanderson has said, they have already had numerous vendors just say, we're not coming. And so when Christy asked them specifically what they were doing to ensure the safety of both the vendors and the customers, the people walking into the building, they said they'd have hand sanitizer at every door. I said, they already have hand sanitizer at every door. So I don't know. And she said that the vendors would be spaced further apart. And Christy asked her, she said, so is that because we're going to have fewer vendors? And she wouldn't answer Christy. So I think it probably is because vendors aren't coming. They'll be, I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know, again, like you said, Julie, who do you write a letter to that goes, I think that's an awful decision.
Well, there's a lot of money involved and there's a lot of money that's not going to come in. So I'm just worried that they're anticipating we're going to spend it, but we're not going to get anything back. So
Yeah, well, you can only imagine that school districts are not going to send their bands. So, I mean, you know, those are big days when they have all those groups come in. So I think they're just holding hope against hope.
It's a matter of time.
But, you know, boy, oh boy, from my perspective, and, you know, a friend of mine in Lawrence said, he said, you know, I don't mind being called old. He said, but there's this 4-letter word that just bothers me. He said, elderly. So all of us who are elderly, that means you're over 60. Frankly, I mean, you know, how much do you want to play Russian roulette with your health in your life. And there's a big meat packing plant right there, not far from the fairgrounds. So, I mean, there's just, this is a crazy gamble they're doing, but my opinion anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, but some of us are dinosaurs, and we really still are roaming the earth.
And we want to keep on for a while. Don't let them push you out. Push you down 6 feet under.
I don't know. I think it's when you look at the age of the people for our Kansas honey producers that man the booth, we're a senior group, that's for sure. There's some people who aren't seniors, but we're a pretty senior group. It's a hard decision. And it is, I know, Bob, I agree with you. I think money's driving it for that area of the state. That's just a huge, huge economic boost. Yeah, lots of tax money. Well, I think that's it for the night. Anybody else have anything for the good of the cause? Ed, are we done?
I think it's a great session. I look forward to the next one.
Well, that's kind of you. Thank you. Guys, keep your questions coming, and we'll look forward to our next regular meeting and have some presentations, and I'm sure they'll be interesting.
Thanks, Becky, for doing this.
Thank you guys for participating.
Send me your stuff in the newsletter so I can put it together this week, hopefully.
Cheryl wants newsletter articles. I'll do that. I've got a couple hours.
I got to put chicks on the roost. They need to learn.
We'll see you later. Good night, everybody.